All right, let's go ahead and get started. So if you're tuning in today, this session is simply about 7 things no one tells you about product management. I'm Martie, and I'll be presenting this for you today. So the session will be pretty streamlined. I'll focus on introduction, a little bit about me while I'm presenting to you. Then I'll go through the disclaimer. It'll be interesting. I'm sure you've never heard a disclaimer, but by the time we get to the end of the 7 things, you'll appreciate the disclaimer. Then I'll go through each of those 7 things that no one tells you, and then we'll wrap up with Q&A. So here's the introduction. I've been a product manager for 4 years. I started back in 2016, and I kind of worked my way up. Back in 2016, I started at pretty much the lowest level of product management, and I've worked my way up, and now I'm a senior manager at Salesforce. At Salesforce, I lead a product called the Heroku Marketplace. So if you have ever been an engineer, you may have used it before. And it's basically our part of our development platform at Salesforce. I'm also founder of FoldingChair, and I think that's what brought me here today to talk to you all. And FoldingChair is a coaching initiative that I started for product managers to help them get placed in the first or second product roles. I'm also an avid traveler. The photo that I put up here is actually me at a basketball game right before Corona broke out and things got really crazy in the US. And then I'm also a tech enthusiast. And I say that in the sense that I have always been in tech. My career's always been in tech. And I will always be in tech. I'm super interested in the space. I love how things are growing and developing. I love hearing about technologies I don't work on. I love to hear about what other people are doing, their approaches, their best practices. So I was really excited to do something like this where I could share some of my own and some of the things that I've kind of learned through my experiences in product. So I do want to talk a little bit more about FoldingChair because I think that's something everyone is always really interested in, how I grew it, how I scaled it, and those things. But FoldingChair was really simply founded on one concept. If there's not enough space for you at the table, just bring your own folding chair. And basically, that's what we've been doing since I started this back in 2018. We've been helping underrepresented product managers in the space put a folding chair at the tables at tech. So if you see some of the logos and brands at the bottom, those are just a few of the places where our coaches are working now. But we've helped dozens. And right now we're at just over $4 million in salaries created for those underrepresented managers. And it's really an exciting thing. It's something I'm super passionate about. The service is completely free. Unfortunately, there's no space in the cohorts right now. So I'm super sorry if you're excited about it and you're like, hey, how can I get involved? Right now it has 0 space. There's much more demand than I can handle right now. So one of the things that I'll be working on this year is really figuring out a way to scale it out to create a platform where more people can join and be a part of it, whether they want to join as a coach and help me out, or if they want to join as a mentee and someone who's looking for an opportunity in product management. So it's really a cool network and it's really something I'm really proud of. So I thought I would share. So I'm going to jump right into the first thing that nobody tells you. Before that, let me give you your disclaimer. So before we begin, I want you to understand that I am talking about the stuff that is uninteresting. It's the stuff that's overlooked. It's less glamorous about product management. It's not going to be in any of those articles that you read. When you read those articles that are like, this is why you should be in product. Product management is the hottest career in tech. They don't talk about this stuff. And this is the stuff that as a coach, as just someone who's been in the space now for a good while, and I have my own kind of war stories and experiences that I've seen. And I've seen as common pitfalls, people coming in with the wrong idea about product management. So I just want to share those things, kind of debunk those things. And my goal for you is just to have a better understanding of this as a career field going forward. So if you want to be in product, hopefully today you'll learn some things. If you're already an existing product manager, you'll be doing a lot of head nodding like, oh my gosh, I've experienced that. And that's good too, because that lets you know that a lot of your experiences are common across product management. I know for me, when I went to my first kind of gathering like this and product managers were talking about things that didn't work, it was a sigh of relief because I thought I was suffering in silence, like maybe I'm just not good enough. where in reality, these are things that are very normal to the product experience. And then the other thing that I want you to take away from this, and I don't have like key takeaways, like you should know this, and this by the time this is done. No focus at all on that. What I really want you to do is just to feel better prepared for pitfalls that are going to come, that are unavoidable. And if you really want to have a long career in product, you're going to deal with at one point or another. And I want you to feel set up for success when those things come. So you know what to do, you know how to migrate and move through it, and you're not coming into those situations blind. So if you've learned something today, if one person, I would just say, if one person learned one thing today, I think that makes it a good use of both my time and the group's time today. So now I will jump into number 7. You are not the CEO of your product. I know there are some people right now that are freaking out, like, what do you mean? That is what every article on the internet says. And as President of the US likes to say, that's fake news. You're not the CEO. You're not the CEO of your product because you're simply not the CEO. There's a key difference between product managers and CEOs. People listen to the CEO because they have to, because the CEO is the boss. Product managers are not the boss. No one has to listen to you. They're not obligated to do that. And that's not your role on the team. Now, I will say most product managers, every CEO has once been a product manager. If you think about it, if you look at all the tech CEOs that are super popular, from Bill Gates to Mark Zuckerberg to even Jeff Bezos, they've all been product managers before, but there's a big difference. What you are, though, is you are a thought leader. You are the visionary for the product. You are the person that people are looking to come up with ideas for how things should be done. If someone knows the product better than you, then you need to work a little bit harder to figure that out. You should really be the subject matter expert for how your product is being built, how it works, all those things. People should, and it really creates a trust on the team. And when you have trust as a product manager, that's when you can really shine and really do some very cool things. And part of being successful in product is really leading through influence. Most product managers, until you get into the more senior levels, you're going to be an individual contributor, meaning you're not going to have people who work directly for you in most companies. If they're doing, agile, if they're doing, software development correctly, you're going to be an individual contributor. So it's really important that you know that it's all about influence. It's about cultivating a team environment where people are trusting you, but aren't necessarily obligated to listen to you. Now, if you're really struggling with this and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to be the CEO. What do you mean? This is so like dismantling. Only it's not. I strongly suggest the book, How Do You Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's an old school business book, but it'll really help you with some of those things. If you are struggling with it, or once you get into your role, you thought you had a handle on it and you're realizing you don't. I also like Leaders Eat Last by Simon Peck, but either one of those books will do the job. I know when I see this a lot when I work with new product managers. They'll come into the office, are super ready to go, and then they can't figure out, they get really frustrated because no one's listening to them. And it's like, you have to show people why they should listen to you, and you have to show people how you know your thing. And it kind of sucks, but when you come into a product role, you're essentially giving a whole lot of responsibility. Being a thought leader and visionary is a big job. And that's why the interviews are so hard. That's why there's so much pressure in the role. And that's why there's big rewards in the role. But if you can really master this, you can have a successful career in product. So moving on to number 6. Your key to success is relationships. And so that goes back into the influence thing I was just talking about, right? Relationships are everything in product management. And if you fail in product, and if you realize this isn't the job for you, I can guarantee you it's because you were not successful in the relationship building stage. Your engineers and your relationship with engineering teams, with engineering managers, with your stakeholders, that is all key to getting your job done. And if those relationships are struggling, if they are not going well, that can be really make or break for your career. I've seen product managers who've literally lost their jobs because they could not figure out how to get along with engineers. And it just became a point where it was so contentious, where it's easier for the product person to leave than to hire in 5, 6, 8 new engineers to work with this product manager. So really bear that in mind. No one's going to tell you that the key to success is relationships. They're going to say, no, it's building something really innovative. It's doing the big thing. No, it's not. It's people trusting you, liking you, and wanting to work with you. So my advice to you is to spend time cultivating relationships. I cannot stress that enough. Tuckman talks about 5 stages of team development. And if you've gone to business school or anything, you've heard about these, the forming, storming, norming, and performing and adjourning stages. That stuff matters here. Every time that you join in a new Scrum team or you join in with a new business team to start thinking about building products, that trust has to be created again. People have to trust you. They have to get over that hump, and then things start to work together, right? So spend time doing that. Relationships are built on trust, and trust is super foundational to being a strong product person. So when you're thinking about how you can grow and work through this stage when it comes, remember, if you want to be the visionary, people have to trust you as their teammate. Those things go hand in hand. So one thing I'll say, my current role, right? In my current role, I have really amazing engineers who trust me and I trust them. So we're able to work and be a super high performing team, and everyone's always shocked by the level of high performance that we have, given how small our team is relative to other teams and what we handle. And that is all on relationships. So some of the things that I've done in my career, like we do regular team building exercises. If you're on virtual teams, you can still do this. Right now, with everyone working from home in the United States, one of the things that we're doing is we're having Thursdays for about 30 minutes where we just get on and we play like online games that we can play as a team. And we're just taking that time to get to know each other, taking that time, to keep the relationships fresh. I highly recommend, if you're starting as a product manager as well into your new role for the first time, sit and meet with every single engineer on your team individually if you can. Get to know them, let them trust you, let them start to meet you and get to just know who you are as a person, right? So when you come together as a team, everyone has some context to you and you're not just this bossy person telling everyone what you think they should do. So give them an opportunity to get to know you and to trust you. Spend that time in team building and spend that time developing relationships. I've hired a lot of people this year, and that is something that I have impressed upon every single one of them, is when it is time for you to start, I give them all a list before they ever get their first project. Go meet with these key people. I want you to get to know them before you're asking them for things, before you need to depend on them for things. Give them some context to who you are and how they're going to work with you. Understand how they want to work best, and that is really going to help you succeed. If you miss this step, the rest of the steps don't matter because you won't be a product manager for long. I can guarantee you that, okay? So number 5, this is a big one. Your requirements are wrong. Nobody's gonna ever tell you that. Product managers usually are representing the voice of the customer. You're also representing a lot of other business stakeholders, and depending on whether you are in consumer product management, meaning that you're working with like the public at large, think Facebook or Amazon, or if you're in more of a B2B type product management, like I am right now. Well, actually, no, I'm technically B2C, but Salesforce, I would say by and large is considered B2B. So that kind of thing, the Oracles of the world, those are B2B companies, right? But no matter who your customer is, you're representing them. And if your requirements are wrong and your representation of them is wrong, you're gonna have a problem. And that is going to lose the trust that you have with your engineers. And if people aren't gonna trust you, if you have basically taken them down the wrong path. And in some cases, depending on how your team's organized as well, you might be the sole advocate. You might be the only person who's talked to the end customer. You might be the only person who sat in on the research that the UX person did or the UI person did. You might be the only person who saw the data on the trends and the analysis. And because of that, if you get this wrong, it'll be really hard to build things, to do rework and things like that. So what I will tell you is to advocate and promote a continuous delivery and agile mindset. And that basically means constantly be spending time understanding where the data is going, where the trends are going, where people are going. Keep that in mind. Constantly gut check yourself. Is this the right strategy? Are we doing the right thing? Whether that's collecting data, whether that's working with research, it's triple checking assumptions and strategies, any of that. That's really what your goal is. People are trusting you. There's nobody really going to be there to double check your work. It's not like product's not like any other job you've ever had. There's not going to be someone who goes through and says, yes, you have correctly spoken to all the customers. You've correctly done this. They're trusting you right away to do that. And that is part of the reason the bar is so high. And most of the time, you're not going to come straight out of college or, it's an early career job. It's usually a mid-career job for that reason, because you have to have a little bit more acumen and trust to be able to do the work. So be meticulous when you're doing your research and you're trying to figure out what the thing is to build. Share your approach with other product managers on your team, other product people in your space, and let people give you feedback on where you want to go. So especially if you're in like a B2C space, if you're working for a Pinterest, a Facebook, a LinkedIn, or something like that, there's a lot of commonalities between those types of platforms. So just try to figure out what the best practices are, figure out where people are going with their products as well, and kind of gut check what you're doing. Another thing that can very quickly mess up your requirements are confusing requirements, customer requirements with product requirements. A customer tells you, I want the moon. That does not mean that you build the moon into your product. That means they want the moon, and maybe you need to kind of dig in a little deeper and understand why they want the moon and figure out what the product requirement is within that need. So that is really key not to convolute those two. When I first started in product, my very first product that I built back in 2016, very first feature, I royally messed it up terribly. What I did exactly what I'm telling you guys not to do. I got my requirements wrong. I wasn't in the details enough. I was working on a feature with another product manager, and though at the end of the day, there was mess up on both sides. The ownership that I take in this is I could have asked more questions. I could have asked more questions about what the end customer wanted. I could have asked to see more data points. I could have asked to see more of the research that justified why we were building something in the way that we did. So basically what happened was, after my team worked on something for a month, we get into a meeting with the other product manager that I'm working with, and they say, wait, this isn't what we need. This is completely different. And you're like, wait, what? And then I have to go back to my direct manager and say, hey, my team, that 4 weeks of work we just did, we got to scrap it. I have to go back to my engineering manager and have that conversation. And then I have to go back to my engineers who have worked at something tirelessly for 4 weeks and say, hey, I messed up. And when I tell you, that can be really demoralizing for a team. And it can be really hard, especially as a new product manager, to gain trust back after that. So it's really key to kind of spend that time figuring out your requirements, making sure you're building the right thing, or at least having the right data and research to back up why you've made the decisions that you've made. So now we're going into number 4. You're not data-driven enough. People aren't going to tell you that. They're just going to walk right over you or walk around you. In worst case scenario, depending on what company you're at, they're just going to show you the door. So data-driven product management, you're probably seeing it everywhere. Everyone wants to be that. Everyone's teaching courses on it. It varies so much from company to company, but data always matters. The more you collect, the more it inspires your work and the more successful you can be. All right, so, and this is another thing that kind of is a little different depending on if you're in a B2B type product environment versus B2C. In B2B product environments, a lot of times you can talk to your end customer. If you're building software for, like I said, an Oracle or something like that, you can go talk to business customers who might represent a large segment or industry that you're building for. When you're in B2C, you're completely reliant on data scientists, and data engineers. Now, you might be as well in B2B. I would definitely say in my role, I have to use a mixture of both, because I do have enterprise grade customers where I can talk to them directly, but I also have millions of online customers who use our marketplace, and I have to depend on data and trends and analysis and things like that to understand what the right thing is to build. But one thing that's important is there's always data. I actually got that saying from one of my friends who works at Facebook, and she told a story about how she was building something, and it was 0 to 100. And 0 to 100 things are simply things that let's go back. There we go. 0 to 100 things are simply things that are being built for the first time. Meaning there's nothing that exists, that's 0, and then when we get done, that's the 100, right? And she was kept being pushed by senior management to come up with more data points, whether that is qualitative data, quantitative data, whatever that is, there's always data. So think about it, work with your data scientists, work with your data engineers, or get really handy with SQL and those types of things to be always having data really tippy for you. You don't want to get into the trap of thinking that you have enough data. There's always more that you can get. You want to get enough that you feel comfortable making a decision. And make sure that you have data that supports why you built something, and then data that also supports the other end of it, which is, did I build this correctly? So you always want to have metrics that help you figure out what the thing is to build, but also metrics. You might hear them called key success metrics. You might hear them called KPIs, whatever that thing is, make sure you have them on both ends. And that's really how you do data-driven. Data drives you, then data will tell you where to stop. So that's what it is. And when you're designing things, I always make sure I design with key data outputs in mind, right? You want to design things and think about usage metrics. You want to have a good relationship and a good idea of how you are going to measure this thing at the end, whether it's measuring adoption or, like I was saying before, success and KPIs. So you kind of got a little preview to this one, but this one's an interesting one and probably the most controversial of all 7 things that I have in here. So I'd love to hear your feedback on this. If you've been a product manager before, you might identify with this one. And this is something that my first manager in product told me this, and I have seen it play out 100 times since. If you're successful, it's the team. If you fail, it's the PM. And this is in regards to building a feature not landing well, not performing. And this is really about failure. Failure is inevitable. If you're in healthy teams, people really should share the blame, but in reality, someone always has to take ownership of the mistakes that happen. And most of the time, it will come out on you. If the engineers built something that was super buggy, it's because the requirements weren't good enough. If QA missed it, it's because you didn't have a good enough acceptance criteria for them to test it. The data scientist missed a key piece of data, it's because you didn't ask the right probing questions or present the problem to them well enough to figure it out. And you can see how this thing keeps going and going and going, and somehow always comes back to you. So the thing to know about this is, if you don't fail, you don't grow. You can't skip this step. If you don't fail at product, then you're not doing product. And I don't know if I trust a product manager who hasn't failed at it. That's actually a question that I ask in my interviews is, tell me about a time you failed. And I want to hear people's raw, candid experiences. So a lot of times I talk about my experience, that first product I built where I failed that I shared earlier, where I messed up and I missed a requirement. But it's really important. This is, if you want to really build your career in product, you got to have a failure story. You're going to have a situation where things don't work out, and you've got to understand the ownership and where you could have done things better. Now, sometimes it really is other people, right? If an engineer doesn't push code, there was nothing you can do about that. You know, if something doesn't get released because a release project manager or something like that messes up, that's not on you. However, if you can adopt a mindset of taking ownership of things when it happens, to truly be a servant leader and to figure things out, you'll have a really successful career. But yeah, A lot of people may not agree with this one. Like, no, if we failed, we all fail together. But I can guarantee you, your senior management believes number 3. If you're successful, everyone did a great job. Wow. You're not going to get additional kudos if it was successful, because they're expected to be successful because they hired you and you're a smart PM. But if it's failed, especially if you're the new PM and you're the new one in the bunch, it's probably something you could have done better. So something to think about, something to take in as you kind of move forward in your career. So number 2, this is another kind of trick of the trade, and a big one that I see new product managers fall into every single time. I've yet to see a new product manager not do this, and I did it myself, so that's why it's in here. You're the what, not the how. And that's this. Your role isn't to tell people how to do their jobs or how to contribute, how to build the software. You tell them what we should build, why it's important, and how you can deliver value. That is what you're focused on. But new product managers, they want to do everything because they've been told you have to own the whole experience end to end. No, good product managers empower other people to be able to do their jobs efficiently, so you don't have the mistakes that you have on number 3. But this takes time. This isn't something you figure out right away. If you have a really strong people manager, it might be helpful. But if not, this is something you really just have to learn. So here's a good way of gut checking that. If you find yourself in a place where you're telling your engineers and stakeholders how to do your job, you're not doing your own job, and you need to stop. Stop right now. Product managers overextend themselves. That's why people talk about how exhausting of a job it is and how hard it is and all these different things, but you're probably overextending yourself and doing a role that's not yours. You're probably being the scrum master when you're not supposed to. You're probably doing something the engineering manager should probably be doing. And don't get me wrong, if you're in a startup or in a smaller business, you might have to do a lot of things. Like today, I started off the call, I said I run three functions, but I'm the product manager. But I also am working right now to give those functions away to other people to do so I can focus solely on doing products. And so when you're thinking about how to kind of move forward and are you doing it the right way, think about, are you contributing to what needs to happen or how it's happening? Engineers are going to need requirements. They're going to need you to tell them what the customer is saying. They're going to need you to explain the data. They're going to need you to invite them in on those conversations. Your job is not to sit and go over how this, well, your job is maybe to sit and to understand engineering's approach, but it's not to write the engineer's approach, especially for you PMs out there that used to be an engineer and then switched to product. Stop doing that. Focus on business value, focus on go-to-market strategies, focus on how to have strong delivery that way, but no more telling engineers how to do their job. It's not your role. And here is the big one. The number one thing no one tells you about product is it's okay to say no. There will always be scope creep. There will always be a customer who needs something. There will always be engineers who want to try it a different way, do it another thing, want more. And their sales is always going to need a feature, especially if you're in those B2B spaces where sales is highly involved in the roadmap. It's okay to say no to those things. A lot of people believe when you first get into product that you kind of have to be a yes man. That's how I drive influence. That's how I build relationships. I just say yes to everybody. And that's not true at all. People respect the person who has strong convictions, who knows their stuff and can say no to something because they're well-researched and versed on a subject. They stick to the plan when it makes sense and they adjust when it doesn't. So don't be so, hey, no, that you don't realize when you can course correct. Obviously you need to course correct sometimes, and that's just how product and software development goes. But have strong understanding with those things. And if you don't agree with something, speak up. One of the things I used to hate when I first started in product was, when you're starting off as like a entry-level product manager, a lot of times you're not involved in the exploration phase. You're more so getting, someone's already coming to you with the problem already defined, and it's just your job just to deliver the feature that is solving that problem. And I used to always question, why is this the problem to solve? We have all these gaps in our product. Why is this the problem to solve? But one thing I will say is my manager at the time really respected that I asked those questions. And eventually, as I developed and got more mature in my product skills, he started asking me, what do you think we should build? What problem do you think we could solve? And the conversation changed. And it was because I wasn't afraid to say, hey, I don't think this makes sense. I don't think this is more important than that. Let's talk about how we got here. Innovation starts with you. You are the product manager. You're the thought leader. You are the visionary. But it starts with your ability to push the envelope and know when to say no, know when to push back, know when to protect your engineers and say, hey, we're not taking on any more work. They've already been working around the clock to get these features done. We're not going to do any more. And people will respect you and they will want to work with you even more. So just to recap a bit, here are the 7 things that nobody tells you. They don't tell you you're not the CEO of your product. They don't tell you that the key to success in product is really all relationships and making sure that you have strong relationships across your business. They're never going to tell you when the requirements are wrong. So it's your job to be in the data and understand. But they're also not going to tell you when you're not data driven enough either. So you're really going to have to figure out what that cadence is for you in your product. And you can learn that by asking other product managers, as you build things, you're going to get an idea of how those things work in your company, but you always want to try to make sure that you're always thinking about data in 2 ways. What data do I need to make a decision? And what data do I need to verify that I've made the correct one? If you're successful, it's the team. If you fail, it's the PM. There's always places for you to grow. There's always ways that you can better empower your team, better influence your stakeholders. So create a mindset, a growth mindset within yourself that you can always do better and always grow. You're the what, not the how. Remember, it's your job to say what needs to happen and how to deliver value. Your job is not to tell people how to deliver value. It's okay to say no. That is number 1. That's the number 1 thing that you have to realize as a product manager. There is no reason for you to be a yes person to everything. You want to be able to say no, and you want to have convictions about things. You want to feel strongly and passionate about your product. I always say, I don't build products I'm not passionate about. And that's really important and key to this whole thing. I believe my session has come to an end. So I think, do I just stop it here?
So thanks a lot, Martie, for joining us today. I hope everyone would have enjoyed the session. This was really helpful.
Awesome. Thank you.